And let's welcome Dr. C.A. Achyut Dani. I would also like to welcome on stage Professor Dr. S.N. Gupta, Vice Chancellor, Maganbhai, Adenwala, Mahagujarat University, Nadiad, are requested to come up on the stage. Mr. Abhay Ghosh, Director, Shanti, Asiatic School, Ahmedabad. Mr. Arun Sutaria, Director, Siddharth Public School, Himatnagar. Retired IAS. Everybody please put your hands together and let's welcome all the dignitaries on the stage. Dr. Geetika Saluja, CEO Projects, Anand Niketan Schools, Ahmedabad. Sabina Sawhney, Principal, Delhi Public School, Bopal, Ahmedabad. Minal Desai, Director, James International School, Ahmedabad. Professor Sandeep Vasant, Navratna University, Vadodara. Dr. A.K. Sinha, Principal Director, Delhi Public School, Vadodara. Archit Bhatt, Managing Director, Tripada Group of Schools and President, AOPS, Ahmedabad. I welcome all the dignitaries on the stage. Once again, I welcome all of you to the New Normal Education Leadership Summit and Awards 2020-24, which is presented by LinkedIn and powered by NobiQ SAP. Now I hand over this stage to Dr. C. Achyut Dani.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let me welcome you on this wonderful morning at this amazing New Normal 2024 Summit, which is hosted and curated by the Ardcom Media. And I have amazing dignitaries on the first panel discussion with me on the dais. And I would request all of them to briefly introduce themselves before we start with the program. And I'll start with myself. I'm Dr. Achyut Dani. I'm the Director General and Vice Chancellor with JG University. Thank you. I would request Archit sir to start his own introduction and it will go sequentially further.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Achyut Bhatt and I represent AOPS as a president as well as I am the managing director of Tripada Group of Schools and I am thankful to Ardcom to give me an opportunity to be on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Archit sir.
Hi, a very good morning, everyone. I'm Sabina Sahani. I'm the principal of Delhi Public School, Bopal, Ahmedabad. And looking forward to a fruitful discussion with all the elite members on stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabina ma'am.
Namaste, and I'm Geetika Saluja, and I'm a good blend of academia and industry. I've just joined Anand Niketan Group as a CEO Projects, but I've been very active in the field of education and simultaneously entrepreneurship. So we'll get to know more about each other as we move further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Geetika ji.
Good morning. Good morning to everybody. I'm Abhay Ghosh, Director, Shanti Asiatic School. My stint with Ahmedabad starts 8 years back, and since then I'm in Shanti Asiatic. So I'm very thankful to Ardcom and all the panelists, and also I hope we'll have a wonderful discussion today.
Looking forward to that, sir. Thank you, Abhay sir.
Namaste everybody, I'm Arun Sutaria from Siddharth Public School. I'm a promoter director. I'm also an active farmer. I'm here out of curiosity to know what discussion is going to take place and is the discussion actually going to help on the ground. Thank you.
Correctly said, Arun sir. Let us take it forward.
I am Professor S.N. Gupta, Vice Chancellor, Maganbhai, Adenwala, Mahagujarat University, Nadiad. My academic and professional background is Ayurveda.
Welcome, sir.
Hi everyone, I'm Minal Desai. I'm the Master NE at GGIS and I'm the Director for Education at Amara Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Minal ma'am.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. A.K. Sinha, Principal Director, Delhi Public School, Vadodara, and the allied schools over there. I've been there ever since the school started. That's 20 years beyond. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sinha sir. Welcome to the discussion.
Good morning, everyone. I am Professor Sandeep Vasant. I am professor in computer science, and now I am the registrar of the Navratna University as well. Prior to this, I was a professor and academic registrar of Ahmedabad University. Most of my time I have spent in Ahmedabad, but now I am in Vadodara. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep sir. So here comes the introduction of all the people sitting on the dais. And the first panel discussion is on the topic of NEP implementation, focus of education to be inclusive, equitable, and holistic. So when we talk about three elements of education, and it is in context of the National Education Policy 2020, we need to look at education from a different perspective. We have been talking about inclusivity, equitability, and holistic education for a while now. But what is the real on-ground scenario in respect of these three aspects? That is what this panel should try and analyze. And maybe as we have, this is, I think, the best combination of the panel, whereas we have the school educators, promoters, as well as the higher education stakeholders with us on the panel. So as we take it forward, first of all, I would request Geetika ji to to define what she thinks of inclusivity, equitability, and holistic education.
Thank you, Dr. Dani. There is one statement called that when you're buried in the deep and in dark, actually you are planted. And when it comes to seed, and when we talk about education, which call about nurturing, and when we talk about inclusivity, comes along with diversity. So there are different seeds, आपके हाथ में बहुत सारे अलग-अलग बीज हैं, और वो बीज को जब आप बो रहे हो, तो first and foremost, everyone has been given an innate potential. The beach also, the seed also has got cotyledons and its own food. It doesn't take food from outside, but it starts growing. And I believe that education, we need to somehow, there's a wonderful analogy which I would like to share, that the seed is taking its ATP energy from the cotyledons, and then it's growing against the gravity, and when the two seeds starts appearing, the two leaves starts appearing, and that's where it has to now get into getting skills for its own survival. Till that, the God has given him the seed to survive on its own and grow on its own. And वो बोलते हैं ना कि आम के पेट से कभी अमरूद नहीं आते. So that's where we are talking about education when it comes about. So a classroom, it's like has to be like an orchard. It has to have all kind of intellectuals, inclusivity in case of intellectuals, in case of social, economical, in case of cultural diversity, in case of physical, I can say, diversity. I can say I would not call it as, because I have a wonderful experience with Blind Men's Association, and there is a play, they have, I think every educator should go through that experience of the black room they have created. So it's like we feel that the world is bright, but it's just because we are more in number. So for the blind, the world is dark, and the way we move around in that world. So that's where we need to understand inclusivity, and equitability talks about very clearly, give what you want, not what you want to give them what they want, to develop their potential, to maximize each and every seed to grow into a finally full-blown tree, and then again give rise to fruits. So the tree never thinks about इसको खाना है और उसको नहीं खाना है. It is for everyone. That fruit is for everyone which has got a seed in it. So that's what the child also needs to be understood in the, so it's more about, not about student-centric approach, I believe. It's more about creating the right society. It's more about creating the right culture. It's more about awareness and acceptance by all stakeholders, society as well as the school. That's where DEI will come hold in a real sense rather than being empty only in the dictionary terms. So diversity, equity, and inclusion are important aspects which needs to be understood in its holistic way, and then only we'll talk about holistic education. We can't jump to saying it's holistic education.
Very nicely articulated. That's what sets the tone of our discussion. So when we look at inclusivity, we may look at the inclusivity at all aspects, from curriculum to the teaching pedagogies to the different classes and masses of the society. When we talk about equitability, I believe that equitability would look at the availability of the resources to the each section and segment of the society. And when we talk about holistic education, it might look at interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary education, whereas an overall development along with the academic as well as the life skill sets are taken care of. So taking this a little forward, I would request Archit Bhai to give his opening remark on the topic.
Well, the first topic is about focus on the NEP implementation. When we are talking about new education policy 2020 and talking about holistic development of an individual, we are also talking about a term called IKS, that is Indian Knowledge System, which prevails in India. Everyone knows that in a Persian historian, Khilji Minaj, in his Tabate Nasari, wrote that it took almost 3 months to burn Nalanda and Takshashila. So look at the quantum of books we had at that time. So talking on this new education policy, first and very important as a educationist, because here higher education is also there and primary education is also there. The first and foremost, when we are changing the fabric, we need to start working on the documentation of our Indian knowledge system. The Indian knowledge system prevails across India, whether you go to north, whether you go to south, right? If we have a small cough and cold, everywhere the medicine given by our mother would be the same. That is the knowledge system which we prevail here. Everything is verbal, because we lost lot of our documents and all. So when we are talking inclusive, equitable and holistic, our main responsibility in equitable would be to give across the globe of Bharat, the new word which we have, write-up which is very important, so that what happens is that everyone gets the same. What is happening in northern state does not happen in the southern state. What is happening in the western does not happen in the northeast.
Correct.
The reason is there is no documented evidence of Indian knowledge system. So So first and very important, I'll be going very basic. The reason is that we need to get into step by step. So first 5 years, we need to get into that documentation first, because when we are talking about inclusive, we have missed out the slow learners and learning disabled in the mainstream. In past 70 years, learning disabled, slow learners have a different campuses where they are not into the society and they are all left out. So that is our biggest challenge for the institutes, that when we take them from the first 5 years of preschools to the higher education, because they are an important part in the society. When you come to any of the public utilities, you don't find a washroom which is friendly for them. You don't find a railway station where you have a lot of, enough space for them to travel. Public transportation should have. So the education is not only giving certification. Education is a better society. So that is the second part. And of course, holistic, when we are talking about 360 degree. So the 360 degree only happens when we will come out of the academic and will get into other co-curriculum. And in Gujarat, there are a lot of limitations. So we'll have to come out of that limitations too. So there are a lot of panelists, so just giving my brief. So from Takshashila to Nalanda, we'll have to go back to Takshashila and Nalanda, document things so that we can pass on to generations and generations. That's what my opinion is.
Thank you so much, Archit sir. Archit sir has pointed out a very important aspect in our entire knowledge system. And at the same time, he said a very beautiful thing, that education is to see that we ultimately build the society. The primary purpose or ultimate goal, two things if we look at it, it is about education should build a society at the end of the day. And when he said, we talk about the new word Bharat, I always look at our country in two parts. When I say Bharat, I look at the rural part of the country. And when I say India, I look at the urban part of the country. And let me tell you, until and unless we work upon Bharat or we take care of what Bharat and rural India is all about, we are not going to achieve what we are talking about or what we really want to achieve. So always, I believe that all of us as an educator should always look into these kind of area where Bharat and India are taken together, and maybe inclusivity may be defined a little in that sense. I would request Sabina ji to give her opening remark.
Yeah, when we talk about education, we mean creating individuals who are global citizens. So that just cannot happen into the confinement of a classroom. It has to go beyond classroom. So that's the reason we talk about holistic approach. Whatever concepts are being taught, they have to be taught in a way that they can apply in their real life. That's the essence of it. Now, when we talk about NEP, NEP is talking about universalization of education, right from preschool to the higher levels. It's talking about the universal enrollment ratio to be going to 100% in 2030, by 2030. So that in itself is a Herculean task. It cannot happen overnight. It cannot happen without structured adaptations, structured acceptances that happen wide across the society, the teachers, the parents, because otherwise we cannot talk about equitability or diversity. Getting them into the system in itself is a challenge. There could be a policy which is very good, but if it's not implemented to its core, then it can lose its purpose. So very, very important for all of us.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Point taken. So maybe the discussion of the panel, which is currently ongoing, can address three questions. That what is the current scenario in the areas of inclusivity, equitability, and holistic education? What are the barriers which are there in relation to what NEP 2020 has suggested? And how and which are the ways through which we can overcome the same? So these are the three things which I would request panel members to focus little on. The question about what is the current scenario, the second is the barriers, and the third is solution which we are looking at. Now I would request Abhay sir to give his opening remark on the same.
Thank you, Achyut. As our panelists have spoken about various things, what I feel is, I all agree with all of them. What I feel is that when we talk about giving holistic education, or we talk about NEP, we are talking about the child-centric education. And when we talk about the child, that means we talk about the voice and the choice of the child. So when we include the voice and choice of the child in whatever we are planning about the child, it could be any policy, then it is really inclusive. So when we talk about all the stakeholders and when we draft any policy, I think the child is the biggest stakeholder there, because we are drafting the policy for the child. For the children across India, as Dani ji said, that children from rural India, children from all across metro cities and schools like us, we have children from everywhere. But when we talk about their education, we talk about their curriculum, we talk about the pedagogy, we talk about the resources, and we talk about giving the resources to them so that we maintain equity. We also need to understand the needs of the child. Every child would learn in a different way, probably would want to learn in a different way. But what we do as education is that sometimes we try to put them into silos, different compartments. Is it really necessary? Because every child is born with certain talent, capacities, and we need to see that every child is important for us. So when we talk about children with different needs, we then start focusing. We then start focusing on how they should be involved in the education process. How we can create a classroom for them where they will be comfortable in learning the way they can learn. So I feel that the new education policy talks about all these things also, and we need to focus on these things also. And then the real sense of holistic education or inclusive education probably will have some meaning to it. And I'm sure that all the schools across India, since the inception of the policy, we are discussing a lot about it, we are talking about it, we are at certain stage of implementation also. And I feel, what I feel is I'm very positive and hopeful that at least after so many years, a policy like this was drafted. After so many years of a certain system of education running in the country, this policy came up so that we start discussing and talking and implementing about it. That's what I feel at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhay, sir. So, when we are talking about all these things and we are getting opinions from the people, and especially I think on the left-hand side where the experts which I have, they are from the higher K to 12 segment primarily. So currently what we are getting inputs are basically about the outflow or the review or suggestions from the K-12 institutions, which are one of the finest in its own term when it comes to the execution and their work patterns. And we are focusing on the three aspects, whereas now I will request Arun sir to give his opening remark. And I would like and request Arun sir to focus a little more on equitability, which is as suggested or as required by the NEP 2020.
Thank you. I'll move from macro level to the micro one. NEP 20 is welcome. We are waiting for the roadmap. Equitable world is fine, and India has the largest population in the world. But there are a lot of other unpleasant things hidden behind. India also has the largest number of illiterates in the world. Are we proud of that? We are trying to hide it. But the world knows it. And we continue to be like this in spite of policy and all that. See, core to any developed country is health and education. If investment in health and education is declining, how is the country going to be developed? We are creating islands of prosperity, islands of good schools here and there, but that's more like a drop in the ocean. Today itself, I think is in the news today that 700 government schools have only one teacher. In Gujarat, 2,600 government schools have been closed. All over India is about 56,000 schools have been closed. And more private schools are opening. Now this is, I don't know, it's a contradictory situation one can see that in our country, it's also a fact, but government may not admit it, is that about 25 to 30% children are still not going to schools. And the dropout ratio, the government claims is 2.5%, actually is close to 30%. A child who gets admission in first standard, is that child reaching to 10th standard? About 30%? No. With this scenario, do we talk about equitable education? Where is the level playing field? Elite schools are for whom? Who has the money, 1 lakh rupees to pay per annum to admit a child in an elite school? Masses and no access. But at the same time, and unfortunately, I am also an advocate, but it's not going to be feasible, is that community action has to step in where government schools are failing. Because in the government, accountability is missing. That's the biggest barrier. And because of that, the quality education that we talk about is not taking place. So a demographic dividend or demographic, do we call it bane or boon? It depends upon us. And our investment in education is going down. What does it indicate? NEP is saying vocational and skill-based education, yes, it's welcome, badly needed. But we are waiting for the roadmap. Give you an example. If Ahmedabad ITI has 150 trades, but an ITI in a tribal area like Limkheda, Vijayanagar, there are only 4 trades. So if children have to learn something, some skills, do they have to come to Ahmedabad? And how many of you? Where would they live? How will they stay and work or learn? So when we talk about these things, are we making investment in this? That's what I said, we are looking for a roadmap. So equitable education is good to talk about, but where is the roadmap? And a country cannot be a developed country, as I said at the cost of repetition, is that if there is no investment in health and education, then the tag of development will have to wait much, much longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun sir. I mean, it is a great thing to see that the panel members which we have here, in our opening remarks also, we have so much of content that, it makes the next speaker think about what should be the area they should look into and touch upon. And it is very dynamic also, it is also changing. And we are still trying to find out the onus, that it is whose onus to look at the NEP implementation, inclusivity, equitability, as well as holistic education. But I primarily believe that somebody has to take a start, somebody has to put their foot forward, somebody has to go through certain pain, and we'll have to attempt to do it. So when we talk about an attempt, it may, a collective one rather, as sir correctly pointed out, that society and the communities to put their legs in, to put their brains in, put their hearts in, so that the new education policy may achieve sooner or later the goals with which it was framed. And as about the roadmap, I would like to have a second round when we talk about the roadmap. But meanwhile, I'll request S.N. Gupta sir to take the discussion forward. Thank you, sir.
When I saw this phrase, new normal, I started thinking on this itself. This phrase is very common nowadays, rather a fashion used in nearly every field of life. But when we think about education or our today's theme, then if it is new normal, that means something before this was normal. And now what we are going to adopt is new normal. But I have a question. If something which was earlier was normal, then why we have to change it? For example, if my blood pressure is normal, shall I need to change something? No. If my blood sugar is normal, shall I change something? No. So if it was normal, then why we need to change it? So reality is that it is not new normal, but it is actual normal, which we are going to adopt now. Why? Because the policies which we have practiced till now have not served our purposes. And therefore, we are now moving to change these policies in the field of education. Actually, in this panel, probably I am totally different person. I am not educationist and not expert of that. But one thing special I have in myself, because I belong to the system which is actively practiced system among Indian knowledge systems, that is Ayurveda. And according to that system, when I analyze the theme of our today's discussion, then I find that solution of every problem, whether it is in education or in our day-to-day life, we can find in our ancient knowledge system. When I started searching on holism and these aspects, I found when we talk about holism, that is not actually holism. We mostly talk about totalism. And we have to now consider that totalism and holism both are different things. Totalism is totally mathematics, and holism is beyond that. And in our Indian philosophy, ancient philosophy, to the system which I belong, holism is not a very easy task to practice. It requires a lot of change in our mindset. For example, it starts from myself, and then it adds to my cosmos. Myself, my family, my community, my society, my nation, my world, and then my cosmos. So, when we talk about holism, this will be the structure of holism, whether it is in education or in any system.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a different perspective to look at the entire topic which we are currently discussing, but definitely very relevant. I would request Minal ma'am to give her introductory remark, or maybe the thoughts which you have now, because the subject has been introduced very heavily by all of us.
Exactly. It's been talked about so much, there's very little to add.
And also there is a ticking timer in front of me which shows me 8 minutes and 30 seconds. So let's take it faster.
So what exactly is it that, are we still talking about inclusivity and all of it? Or
Ma'am, I would like to, I have a very specific question. I would request the panel members to answer the same. So when we look at the three items, inclusivity, equitability and holistic education, I have three things to ask. One is what that has already been defined. Second is what do we think as educators, that what are the barriers to it? That is one more questions to be answered. And one more is, if you have identified the barriers, what are the solutions available? So barriers and solutions to this particular thing should be talked about.
Okay. So I think what, as you mentioned, has been defined. Talking about barriers, I think all of us in principle agree that education should be equitable and should be holistic and all of that. However, our problems come in at micro levels. So
Correct.
I think our biggest barrier is our mindset. It is not out there. It is within. It is within that classroom of 30, 40, 60 students that we have. Can we be equitable to those students to begin with? Very few of us will have the honor of making large macro decisions that change the fabric of the society or the government and all of that. But we do have our own spheres of influence. Within that sphere, can we be more equitable? Can we be more fair? Can we simply be a little more empathetic towards the other person? I think that would be the first place to begin with. So mindset.
Absolutely. Very well articulated, ma'am.
Thank
Very
you.
correct.
And I believe that begins first with training our teachers and our adults. There is no way our students or our young ones are learning what an equitable society looks like until and unless it has been emulated by the adults in their larger environment. And changing an adult's mindset, as all of us know, is extremely difficult. It is lodana chana chamba jevu chhe. It is impossible to do that. But until and unless we can get there, until and unless we can get the right people to mentor our students, this is going to be a pipe dream. NEP has been around since last 4 years. We've been talking new education policy, new education policy. Somehow it is becoming old and yet not being implemented. NEP 2020 and we're looking at 24, and what are the genuine changes that we've seen on ground? Tell me, like changes that the government has brought, very few. As an institution, you may have chosen to take a few things, but genuine on ground changes, very few. So we start things with great fanfare, but the on ground reality sometimes is just dismal. And India is a unique space. So very often we achieve things not because of the system, so not by design, but in spite of the system. So I think it is in the individuals that the strength lies, and as individual institutions, schools, colleges, while what sir said is right, we do have islands of excellence in the ocean of dismay, but it is those islands that will have to collude and take this forward. So with that, I'd just say that it is about looking at our circle of control and saying, what is it that I can do? Moti vato aparne badhane game, but what exactly is happening is for us to see, okay, what is it that I can do in this situation? And we address that. I think if all of us just commit to that much, that will be good enough. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So it is about a macro design and an individual desire to achieve the same would make some sense on this. And I would request Sinha sir to take the same discussion forward.
Thanks a lot. Basically, I would like to begin with that one very old adage, which meant to say that inclusivity can always be had if we celebrate the commonness and the differences together. If we are going to identify them in two different boxes, we could never be inclusive. When we talk about something being equitable, we have to ensure how far we as educators move forth to make that equitability available. And once we have gotten into these two, there is a very old policy being followed in America that talks about no child left behind. If we can ensure progress for every child, probably we would have done our holistic job. In the event of trying to do the big things, we do not even indulge in doing the small ones. In class 2, I believe I had read a lesson that said, Uncle Podger hangs a picture. And I still remember that one line. In the event of finding a solution, the problem itself would be lost. And that's probably what we have been doing all the while. So not taking much of the time keeping that TikTok in front, I just suggest, let us all begin from ourselves. We as educators, whether we are administrators, whether we are school owners, whether we are promoters, let us all check what each one of us are contributing. Why do we depend upon the government for everything? Why do we have to look at others? When we are capable, when we are worthy, why should we not do it? Let us ask this question, and I think we would have achieved the target. As she said, 4 years we are not doing anything. I think in 4 months we would have done enough. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. It was very nicely put. And I would request Professor Sandeep Vasant to take the same thing forward, and maybe you can highlight the entire thing from a perspective of an higher education institution.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Dani. Everybody has literally put me in pressure by reminding a ticking clock. But anyways, registrar always works under pressure. That's not an issue for me. So I would like to bring in the professorial view here, because charity begins itself from the professor in the class. And when we talk about inclusivity, it is not only the responsibility of the leadership at the top, but the professor who is there in the class must have to think about it. So is professor, taking a content which includes the diversity in the class? Let's say we are talking about science, technology, engineering, maths, STEM, but now the word has coined as STEAM, so arts is also included. But I'm sure that only arts will not help. Humanities, now artificial intelligence or technology, everything has to be together in the class. The second thing is my language in the classroom is inclusive. We mostly take the example by saying he or she, but there is another word, they, that will represent us in the class, that are we really inclusive or not. So rather than taking those examples, we should use proper language. The other thing is, do I do a culturally responsive teaching in my class? Do I take example, whenever I would like to explain any point? Am I taking the leaders or the people who have contributed in that particular field from a different caste, creed or religion? Then I am really an inclusive in my classroom. And the last thing that Mr. Ghosh has also said, that we have to give a voice to the student. So when I am designing my curriculum, am I partnering with my student? Though it may be possible that they are exiting from that course, but I am taking their feedback seriously, because I am sure that all university, all school have the very good feedback mechanism. But are we really implementing it? So that's one thing from the professorial point of view I would like to highlight. The second thing is about systematic barriers. I would say that proactiveness from within is required. I did a very small survey on NEP participation. The result was not so encouraging from the educators. Hardly 3% of the respondent, did participation when the NEP was in its draft stage and it was put up in the public domain. So I think when we talk about inclusivity, diversity, see, government is giving enough chances to all of us. It is us who has to also proactively participate into it. So when NEP was in draft phase, I feel that we should have taken much more participation to suggest our views, and it could have been much more than that. That's one thing. And the technology, the question you asked, that how holistically we are using. So as a professor, we must use a lot of technology in my class. And one such example, let's say AR and VR is a new technology. Are we really using this technology in the class? It's not only a technology professor can be use it. Even at school level, AR and VR apps, just like a Google Expedition, which gives a lot of areas to explore and to understand the domain very well through these technologies. So holistic education is all about giving freedom to the students, choices to them. And at the university level, we have always believed in that the curriculum has to be very flexible, and we have aligned our curriculum with the NEP, and 15% of the credit we have already given to the students. It is a flexibility. We are not saying we are allowing. Allowing is an authoritarian word to the student. Rather, it is their own choices, and 15% of the credit they are using it by both the hands. So engineer goes to the architectural history class, and the architect is going to a mechatronic class, and this is what the holistic education is all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And as we have already completed the timeline which we had, but Archit Bhai wants to say something on it, and I would also request any other panel member, if they want to express any idea or their comment at the end of the session or panel discussion, they can very well do it, but kindly restrict yourself to a limited amount of time.
Yeah, sure. I'll just take 1 minute. When we are changing the fabric, we should know the old fabric first. So the education policy which was announced, which was called National Policy on Education, 1986. And it itself wrote that it has to be implemented from 92, so almost 6 years. The document it said. The document which I have with me was talking about early childhood and care. It was talking about language development. It was talking about vocational as a different career, right? And we were talking about literacy in that. We were also talking about higher education, to open universities and rural universities and all. Now, after 34 years, almost 34 years now, so we need to understand that the progression path here has that we have universities in place. Yeah, we have rural universities where we have Jawahar Navodaya is in place, which was one of the agenda of 86. So now the main important is that we need to get into, and our roadmap has to have Indian knowledge system, which is a robust system if even after 500 years of invasion, 3000 years of invasion. So we need to get into that. That is only what I would appeal to the educators sitting here along with the leaders, that we need to understand Indian knowledge system and the processes which we have been following it. And this is how we can start implementing in our schools and buildings and institutes. That's what I wanted to tell.
Thank you, Achyut bhai. And taking it to a conclusion, what I could understand from whatever the esteemed panelists have put in is that the new education policy is there. It might serve as a guideline to us, but the onus of implementing the same will depend on us, the educators and the implementers at a micro level. That is the first part. Inclusivity would not only include the or we talk about inclusivity at a macro level, we should look at inclusivity and equitability at the micro level, and we should start implementing at the places which are under our control, right? We should start with our own institution, and let us not forget that we stay in a country which is in two parts. Again, coming back to the original theme or original idea, which I always insist and request everyone to look at, is the rural Bharat and urban India. Until and unless we look at both of them simultaneously, or rather we may be little focusing more on the rural Bharat, then ultimately I believe that all the aims which NEP has set in, or as educators we should look at, can achieve the same. With this, I would like to conclude this panel discussion. I would thank each and every panelist here on the dais. Big thank you to all of you. And I hope all the audience would have definitely taken the inputs from the esteemed panelists, and maybe we can all work together in implementing NEP in a better way and making and bringing a change in our country the way we desire. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Dr. Dani, can I add one thing here?
Please go ahead, ma'am.
It's very important to have the Education Institute. I think we were discussing about the Eklavya model. That's where inclusivity and equity comes into practice. When even though governments are closing their schools, but the private schools have to come together as a PPP model and support. So like in Anand Niketan has in Kaprada called Eklavya model, where social SC and ST students are having good quality education at no cost. They don't need to pay anything, but it's been taken care of by the private and the government itself. So such kind of things, if same is with Navrachna, we were discussing about it. So if in same case, if the universities, the private educational institutes come forward to support the government and are able to get some CSR well, I think we will be able to bridge this gap, and we will be able to the last, I'm just answering that last is how. This barrier can be bridged very well.
Absolutely, ma'am. And even if you look at it, when we are into professional and technology courses, the admission committees are also allotting the higher education institutions students with the tuition fee waiver schemes, wherein the special segments of the society are taken care of in an equitable and inclusive way. So things are happening slowly and gradually, and I think it will aggregate to a better achievement for all of us. Thank you very much once again. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for this wonderful session. I request all of you to stay on the stage. We want to felicitate all of you. Very first, I request Dr. C. Achyut Dani to felicitate all the panelists who are present on the stage. Can we have certificates for them? I request Dr. C. Achyut Dani to felicitate. Very first, Professor Dr. S.N. Gupta, Vice Chancellor, Maganbhai Adenwala, Mahagujarat University, Nadiad. Thank you so much for giving your time for this particular event and for giving your contribution for New Normal Education Leadership Summit and Awards 2024. Next, Professor Abhay Ghosh, Director, Shanti Asiatic School, Ahmedabad. Mr. Arun Sutaria, Retired IAS, Director, Siddharth Public School, Himatnagar. Dr. Geetika Saluja, CEO Projects, Anand Niketan School, Ahmedabad. Sabina Sahani, Principal, Delhi Public School, Bopal, Ahmedabad. Everyone please put your hands together for all of them. Minal Desai, Director, James International School, Ahmedabad. Professor Sandeep Vasant, Navrashna University, Vadodara. Dr. A.K. Sinha, Principal Director, Delhi Public School, Vadodara. Mr. Archit Bhatt, Managing Director, Tripada Group of Schools and President, EOPS, Ahmedabad. And I request to Mr. Kumar Chandan Anand to come up on the stage to felicitate our session moderator, Dr. C.A. Achyut Dani, Director General and Provost, JG University, Ahmedabad.